A sincere expression of gratitude to our esteemed patrons for their generous monthly contributions.
Cousin Mark and Ashling.
Karen and Kate.
Stephanie and Courtney.
Lynn and Margie.
You too can become a valued patron and unlock a realm of exclusive content by supporting our mission for as little as $3 a month. Your contributions sustain our commitment to delivering high-quality content. Visit wickedwanderingspodcast.com and click on the support tab to join the ranks of our dedicated patrons. Thank you for considering this opportunity to deepen your engagement with Wicked Wanderings. Your support is paramount in enabling us to continue our journey into the realms of mystery and true crime.
I don't like that things that look like that so close to my face.
Well, then take it off.
Take what off?
Hannah, take it off.
Take the condom off. Here we go.
Oh.
No, I'd rather have the condom
my
on.
ears.
That's what she said.
That was a properly used
Yes.
one. But I'm glad I have this.
Was that better? Was that better?
I have nothing left.
Okay. Hi, I'm Hannah.
And I'm Courtney.
Join us as we delve into true crime, paranormal encounters, and all things spooky.
Grab your flashlight and get ready to wander into the darkness with us.
This is Wicked Wanderings. Hello, Wanderers. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
We are back with another Wicked Wanderings episode with a special guest episode and an extra special guest. Woohoo! So, hello, Jonathan.
Who's who? Who's the extra special
Yeah,
guest? Who's
you're-
just the
You're,
regular
well,
guest?
you're the extra special guest because she's the special guest doing the episode.
Oh.
So, hello, extra special guest, Jonathan. Whoop, whoop.
Hi.
And here is the special guest who's doing the episode. Hello, Mom.
Hi, Hannah. Hi,
Thank
Courtney.
you for coming
Hi, Lynn.
on.
Hi, extra special guest Jonathan
Hi, Ma.
and Rob.
Hello. I hope everyone's new year is going well. It is January 8th right now, and we've had a whole week of this new year, 2025.
A whole week of writing 2024 when we should have wrote 2025.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it. Mom, what you have the floor. What do you have for us today?
I don't have to get on the floor.
Mom's got jokes today.
Wow.
You have the chair, Lynn. You have the chair.
The chair.
Break a leg.
Break a leg. So today I would like to talk about Mrs. Goody Ann Glover.
Ooh.
So Goody just means Mrs. and her name is Ann Glover. And as my family knows, I recently went to Ireland, spent 10 wonderful days there, didn't want to come home. Asked them to ship my dog, I would have stayed. So I'm currently obsessed with all things Irish, including our heritage and a lot of history. So as I've been doing a lot, trying to understand the reasons people left Ireland during the Great Hunger and the Civil War and why my grandmother left and a lot of her family, I came across the case of Ann Glover, who was an Irish immigrant, came to Boston via Barbados. So she and her husband were originally from Ireland. And during the time of Cromwell, when he was forcing people out and they became indentured servants and they were being pushed out of Ireland, especially the Catholics, they ended up going down to Barbados as indentured servants. And there her husband was killed for not renouncing his Catholic faith.
And this is 1600s?
So this is 1688.
Thank you.
So this is prior to the Salem witch trials. So Salem is about 1692. So we're talking 4 years prior to all that. After the Pendle witch trials in England, we see some similarities through all of the witch trials. But yes, definitely predates Salem. And the interesting thing is when I started reading about this is our old friend Cotton Mather.
Oh, dear.
Wanderers, if you haven't listened to the Salem witch trials, the episodes that were done
And the Springfield witch trials.
about a year and a half ago, this is really interesting. And Cotton shows up in really more of a definitive way in this trial. As we know, in the Salem witch trials, Cotton Mather actually wrote the kind of the postscript on it. He's the one that wrote the book of everything that happened. He was given access to all the judicial records and chronicles, and he kind of put it together. He only was in Salem once, but he did caution them against the use of spectral evidence. So he and his father both. But we'll get to Cotton.
And I do apologize. I'm not looking at you, Mom. It's quite a strain.
Sorry, I'm sitting next to you.
It's all right.
So,
Just letting you know.
so if you're not familiar with this part of the country, Danvers, which is where the Salem witch trials took place, is about 20 miles, give or take, from Boston proper. And so this is not next door. It is within traveling distance. So it's not that far, and you certainly would be shared. So we'll see a lot of similarities what happened later in the Salem witch trials, because our friend Cotton did write a book about the Ann Glover trials, which actually became almost like a primer of what to do to make sure that you execute witches, bad witches, and except the Salem witch trials just took it to a nth degree, right? So, poor Ann Glover. So they say she was an elderly old hag. By looking at some of the dates of, I'm thinking she was probably in her late 40s.
Wow.
Oh, God.
I'm approaching hag. I'm approaching quickly.
Now, so I think we're at spinster right now, and then comes hag. That's what I would think.
Quick descent.
Yep.
So Anne, as I said, Anne was kicked out as an indentured servant, went to Barbados, ended up making her way, escaping. I don't know how she ended up in Boston with her daughter, Mary, and a cat, which, you know, you can't have an old woman
And a cat. No.
and a cat, and you
Witch.
gotta,
Add a broom. She's a witch.
She's a witch.
you're a witch, right? You're a witch.
Never mind if you have a teat. That just...
Or two.
Yeah.
Or two.
So again, she was part of that 50,000 people that were deported. And it was just a really terrible time for Ireland. There were 15 to 20,000 people that were killed on the battlefield. And they said 200 to 600,000 civilian casualties from violence, famine, and disease. So Cromwell was a Puritan, and he took lands from people and actually helped to move along that prejudice against the Irish and against Catholics. And if you were both, that was really bad.
Which is so ironic, because the Puritans, their whole platform was they didn't have religious freedom.
Exactly.
So, just very ironic.
Well, no, the Puritans didn't care about religious freedom at all.
For themselves, though.
Well, it wasn't religious freedom. It was literally purifying the Church of England. They didn't want anybody else to have any other say.
Yeah, because they felt that the Church of England, the CVE, had a lot of Roman Catholic tendencies in a ritual and stuff. But you're right, the Puritans. So we'll see what Cotton Mather's family, his grandparents, one of his grandfathers was actually either left or kicked out, had been in Suffolk in the UK, well, England at the time, and because of his Puritan beliefs. But Puritans are not pilgrims. So Puritans are very religious fanatics who believe a certain way is the only way and the right way, and they're the only ones that know it. Very similar to some of our really extreme evangelicals today. Not any different at all.
like some of our relatives.
Yeah, well, not my relatives.
My relatives. Johnny's relatives.
Not my relatives.
Anyway, so here's poor Anne. She's a widow woman living there, and she becomes a good wife. She becomes a housekeeper. She's doing laundry and cleaning up and doing all of that. She was a domestic laborer. She actually went to work for this gentleman who had 6 children, and he had a wife too. Okay, so here she is living in Boston. She comes here about 1680. She's working alongside with her daughter now as a domestic servant for John Goodwin, who's actually a stonemason. He's in a firmly established Boston family, very strong Puritans that she's working for. And Martha Goodwin, the 13-year-old daughter who was the second in birth order, she has an older brother. She accuses either Anne or the daughter of stealing laundry. So poor Anne, she, as any mother would do, or anyone accused of stealing who's very poverty-stricken, she goes after this girl and she lets her have a tongue lashing. Shortly after, the girl falls ill.
See where this is going. Which? It's just which.
So she's got an older brother who's never afflicted, and she has a very young baby, actually, whose name is Hannah, who's just a year old. She never becomes afflicted. But the 4 children in the middle all become afflicted with strange seizures and barking and making noises and having pain. Only during the day, but at night when they went to sleep, they weren't afflicted by anything. So they bring a doctor in, right?
Psychology could do a lot with that one.
Yeah. So they bring this Dr. Oakes in, and he comes in, and he says, well, it has to be witchcraft. It has to be witchcraft.
A doctor said that?
I wish
doctor-
I could use that when someone asks me about their kids' behavior. It has to be witchcraft. I can't figure it out, so it's
I can't
definitely
fix
witchcraft. Yeah.
So poor Anne has a reputation in the neighborhood of being a little crazy. So, and she's Catholic, and she doesn't speak English very well. So they all said, oh, it's got to be Anne. You know, we had this altercation about some missing laundry. And so now my kids are sick. And then, of course, all the neighbors come in, and one neighbor says, oh, my son dreamt that she came down the chimney to torment him and
Yeah,
stuff.
right.
So this was this whole thing about spectral evidence. You know, you're not supposed to believe anything like that. So anyways, our good old friend Cotton Mather, he comes in. This is what he writes. And I'm going to quote here like Anna does.
And here I am quoting.
Here I am quoting. Cotton says, she's a scandalous old Irish woman, very poor, a Roman Catholic and obstinate in her idolatry. So during her trial, so they bring her, this poor woman, to trial. So Cotton Mather's there for all of this. They bring her to trial and I tell her, recite the Lord's Prayer, because if you can't say the Our Father in English, then you're a witch. Has to be in English.
But she doesn't speak fluent English.
No. So this woman says the Our Father in Gaelic, Irish, her native tongue, and then says it in Latin. Now we got to remember, up until about the 1970s, all the masses, I remember as a kid, Catholic masses were all in Latin. My father, who never spoke anything other than English, could tell you the whole mass in Latin because he was an altar boy. So she can say it in Latin, she can say it in what they think is Gaelic, but she can't say it in English. So that meant she was guilty.
And nowadays we call that intelligent.
Yes.
Almost
she
3
could speak-
languages.
she could speak 2 languages and stuff.
Ma, a quick question. Do we know where the John Goodwin house was in Boston?
I do not.
I'd be
fun
really
to look at.
interested to hear where that is, or was, rather.
Yeah. So remember, Cotton is actually a co-pastor at it was the Congregationalist Church, which has been in 7 or 8 locations in Boston. I'm not sure the exact timing of where that was then, but we'll get to good old Cotton in a minute. But I wanted to talk about Anne for a second. So she comes out of Ireland, and there's a history of witchcraft. The first witchcraft trials were back in the 1300s. She's been persecuted for her religion. She's gone to Barbados. Those were called coffin ships that they sent the Irish down in. She managed to live through that. She has a child. She loses her husband. She ends up in Boston. She can't speak the language. She's in with Puritans. They hate her because, number 1, she's widowed. Number 2, she's Irish. Number 3, she can't speak English, and she's an old hag of about 45. So the poor woman, she never had a chance. She never had a chance. And in Ireland, it's very common for them to have wise women or healers. And there's a whole cult of fairies. My grandmother used to talk about the fairies. And she was a very Irish Catholic, but there was a whole culture of believing in the fairy people. And sometimes they were good fairy people, and sometimes they were not so nice fairy people.
The Fae.
The Fae. Right.
There's some great book recommendations.
I was just going to say, Hannah's little bookworm head, I can see it turning.
Love my fantasy fae books. Anyways.
Oh.
Oh, we could talk later. Why are you...
It just caught up with me what you really meant. It's smut, isn't it?
It's not...
Well, not all of them are smut. Some.
You know.
Depends. Is that what you want?
Is that...
No, I thought it was more of like the history of the Fae.
Oh, no. No.
It's like fantasy.
And then you were like, fantasy, and I was like, oh, that sounds great. And then I realized, oh,
Fantasy
no.
fae.
She does, yeah, no.
If we come across a good just fae history, we'll let you know.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Mom.
Sorry,
Please
Lynn.
continue.
No, don't be sorry.
Your daughter's
Gives
awful.
me a break.
I'm not awful. I'm a good girl.
We wouldn't go that far.
You hag.
I'm not.
She
at
has
hag
not
status.
approached hag yet. She
I am
has like 10
Spencer.
whole years. I got you.
I may have teats, but I have several. 3? I have 3? Damn it. I'll have to count them later. All right.
Okay, so Cotton Mather, who is in Boston, and he's got his own issues, and I can't wait to talk about what those are. He shows up and he starts interrogating her in her cell at night, where supposedly she is praying to her. What she says through an interpreter comes out as spirits. I'm thinking that she's probably praying to saints.
Yeah, that would make sense.
You know, she's Catholic, so she's probably praying to St. Anthony and St. Bridget and, St.
Whatever
Catherine.
saint will listen.
Whatever saint will listen. And the Irish have a really close connection with the saints. I remember I had a great aunt who was a nun and was Irish. And we went in one time into her cell, and she had her statue of St. Anthony, which was her favorite saint, and his face was turned to the wall. And my mother said, Sister Mary Stella, why is St. Anthony facing the wall? And she said, well, I prayed to him, and he didn't answer me, so I got mad and turned him around. So there's a real strong connection between these people and their faith and their saints. He's saying, yes, I've been praying to these spirits. And so Mather, through the interpreter, whether they could speak Gaelic or not was another thing, said, oh my gosh, these are demons she's praying to. So they go to her house and they find these little dolls. Now, whether they are icons for her to pray to, her saints, whether they were puppets, I wonder in Barbados there's a really strong culture of voodoo. I mean, who knows?
True.
I mean, I don't think she had anything. I personally, from what I read, she seemed like she was a really strong Catholic woman, but she also had a really, what we always called an Irish temper. And when people would say stuff to her, she would yell at them. But at one point, they thought she was speaking in tongues because she was speaking Gaelic, her native language. And they were thinking she was speaking like in tongues, which was not a Puritan thing. Or she was communicating in the devil's word. This poor woman could not catch a break. No. She really could not catch a break.
Cards were definitely not stacked in her favor.
No. So he says in his own writings that he cannot speak Gaelic, but he's pretty sure what she was saying. So I don't know if that's better than I don't know. So anyways, we don't know who the translators were. We don't know if they were actually understood. They were concerned about her mental health, so they brought all these physicians in to assess her mental health. Again, these are English-speaking male doctors talking to this Irish woman about her mental health, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, she's fine. Yeah, she's fine." So I think that's just prejudice and ignorance. I don't know any other way to categorize that. So they said she was mentally competent, and she was executed. She told them on the way to be hung that her death would not relieve the children of their illness. Now, she was trying to tell them, I think, was
this isn't how to fix it.
And she didn't do it. She's like, I'm not connected to this.
Right.
Yeah.
And even Cotton Mather wrote after that he believes that she was in league with someone else. And that he said, right in his writings, he did say that he thought there was someone she was in league with. And he even said that when she was executed, that the children would not get any better. So I'm wondering if he was trying to kind of cover his tracks, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so she dies November 18, 1688. They hung her in what is now the South End neighborhood on the current site of the Holy Cross Cathedral, which to me is good for you, Anne. I mean, at least you're on, they built the cathedral. Only, I Googled it, John, 0.2 miles from your neighborhood.
Yep, I live right around the corner from the Roman Catholic Cathedral.
Yeah, you can see it almost see it from your front door. Yeah. So they said she was hung there. A lot of people want to believe she was hung on the elm that was in.
They have the hanging tree on the common.
Yeah, but they said that probably wasn't where it happened. She was the last person that was executed for witchcraft. But in researching this, I found there were thousands of people that were buried on the common, which just totally creeps me out. They had mass graves. They had indigenous people. The Puritans were killing the Quakers. The Puritans were just a real issue,
But one thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned this before when we were talking offline about your podcast topic, and I told you how interesting I thought the history of Washington Street, which is the main artery that takes you from basically downtown Boston with the Common straight out to Roxbury is. And along the way, that's where the Roman Catholic Cathedral is. And that's where not just your person would have been hanged, but also traders and pirates and other people accused of tons of people would have been hanged out there.
Yeah.
Because when we look at the map of Boston, the majority of it is filled in land from the 19th century, including the South End.
Yeah.
But basically, Boston was technically a peninsula, but more like a tiny island, which is today's Boston Common, a little bit of Beacon Hill, a little bit of downtown, a little bit of the North End and West End. And then this very skinny land bridge, which is modern day Washington Street, which would have basically taken you from modern downtown Boston straight out to Roxbury with water and swamp on either side. So very close to the Roman Catholic Cathedral is an intersection, probably just a block or two up, closer to downtown, called the Boston Neck. And that's where the city gate would have been for Boston. So she would have been hanged, just like many other people, would have been hanged outside
of the gate.
The gate
yes.
of,
that makes
but
sense.
basically along the only main highway.
Right.
And then a few blocks further, walking away from downtown Boston towards Roxbury on Washington Street is a very old cemetery. Most graves aren't marked. And it would have been a place for the undesirable, people who'd been hanged outside the city walls to be buried as well. But there's a lot of really interesting history about why modern day Washington Street is so important.
Is there a monument or a plaque or something for her at least?
They actually had a Goody Glover Day or something, whatever it was, in Boston to kind of say,
oops, sorry.
Guess what? Oops, sorry, you made a mistake.
Kind of what Salem did for all the witches, quote unquote, that were hung in Salem. They gave them.
Yes.
I wonder if there's anything in the cathedral.
I don't know.
That would be a good spot.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, she's
It would be.
almost a martyr
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, she was. And I think they realized that 300 years later, we made a mistake, But we really have to understand how strong the Puritan connection to Boston was. I mean, a lot of them were there. They had no religious tolerance at all. And the Quakers, the king finally reached out to them and said, stop executing Quakers. You got to stop because the Quakers were very steadfast
They're
in their
very
beliefs.
peaceful people, the Quakers.
But they're also very steadfast in their beliefs. So they were told not to come into Boston proper. They would cut off an ear. The second time they would cut off another ear. And then the third time they would execute them. There were indigenous people that they killed. They really had no tolerance for anybody that wasn't a Puritan.
Was it the Puritan that believed in predestination for salvation?
I think that's right.
Because who's the guy that's buried? Okay, yeah, there's a guy that's buried up in Northampton.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Oh,
I don't know why
Jonathan
I can't
Edwards.
think of his name.
Yeah.
I mean, now we're getting into the 1700s.
I know,
so-
Sinners
but
in the
I-
hands of an angry God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was his famous
I
sermon.
remember
He
learning that
preached
with Pastor
there,
Graham. Did you go on that field trip?
No, we didn't go to Northampton.
Maybe I'm going
Sodom,
off topic, but-
Gomorrah.
Yeah, right. Bring a little Christian class too.
Surprise, I'm still gay. That didn't help.
Johnny, we wouldn't want you any other way.
Good.
Live your truth, baby. Live your truth. So, anyways, her poor daughter, Mary, has a total breakdown.
Well, they probably made her watch too.
Yeah, I know.
True.
She had a total breakdown. There were a lot of people that booed her during the execution, but there was one person that said this was absolutely ridiculous. This woman did nothing but be who she was and said, you killed somebody. But here we go. So this is after. I think this is where it gets interesting. I feel bad for this woman, no doubt, but this is where it gets interesting. So Cotton Mather has these 4 of 6 children, right, that are not getting better. So he takes the oldest daughter into his house to live with him so that he can pray and fast. And this happened, Pendle witch trials. This happened in the Salem witch trials, where someone would take one of the kids in. It was almost like they were coaching them. And this girl was not getting better. It was just not getting better.
This is the bratty 13-year-old.
This is about a 13-year-old.
Martha.
Right. Yep. So anyways, the younger 3 children, they get Martha out of the house. The younger children go back to normal. Interesting.
Surprise.
And the eldest son, who was probably, I guess, 15, 16 at the time, and the baby never impacted it at all. There is a report where she tries to throw herself into the fire. And they were saying it was demons. And I'm going, no, that's just a guilty conscience, right? But Cotton has some problems. And this is the other part of the story, is that he's a well-educated Puritan. He actually was admitted to Harvard. Now, Harvard's not the Harvard we know now. Harvard was a seminary. It was,
only men too, right?
Only men, only Puritans. Very, very different than the university that's just so well known right now.
It's not the Gilmore Girls Harvard.
He goes to Harvard and he's there for a couple of months. He's so badly bullied, he goes home. He runs home.
Where?
I know. And he tries it again. But he was awfully young at 11, but it had a lot to do with his father's position with the school. So I have a quote.
And here I am quoting.
By his peers, and they said that he was aggressive, vain, and a genius. He had over 400 published writings. He also competed with his father. He never could quite live up to his father's reputation. His father's name is Increase Mather. So, the Puritans, they have these great names. Like when you're born, they kind of name you like
Chastity.
she could be like God's grace every day, but that would be her first name. So his father's name was Increase. He's Cotton, which was his grandfather's name on his mother's side. That's how he became Cotton Mather. Because he has so many issues, and because he also that religious zeal, it kind of was like a lethal combination. He came from a very prestigious Boston family. He did have a speech defect, which caused him to stutter, and could be part of the reason he was bullied when he first went to school. He did return to Harvard and got his BA and MA. He was very young. His father was the Harvard president then. So they probably had some insulation from the bullying. It did say he lived in his father's shadow. They did have a falling out during the Salem witch trials. His father didn't care for the way that Cotton was, I don't know, writing about it or something. But they did have. They are actually both buried in the Cobb's Hill Cemetery. They're both there. They have a family plot there that we can see. But I just think it was like the perfect storm of some really bad things happening, where this poor woman who escaped Ireland, that came back from Barbados, thought she was coming to the New World for opportunity. And just because they didn't understand who she was or didn't speak her language, she was executed. And then you've got Cotton Mather. You've got someone who's got some real parental issues, very well educated, strong Boston family. and then writing about it, and then getting involved in the Salem witch trials. So I think they thought he was really brilliant for a while, but they said his reputation's really taken a hit over the last decades. People are blaming him for a lot, but he really was not that involved with the Salem witch trials. But he definitely he is handling interrogations. He's handling misinformation and, taking a 13-year-old girl to live in his house after to pray and fast over her.
A little weird.
A little
strange.
It is
a little strange.
Kind of to prove his point, but then in his writing, kind of vindicating himself. It's just a really sad story all the way around, But Salem witch trials, we've got women that are single, mostly, widowed or elderly, who have nobody to protect them, who are misunderstood, who may or may not have some healing. Again, language barrier, just a real issue of misogyny, prejudice, and religious zeal that it still exists today. Let's face it. It happens all over the world, So that's the story of Goody Mrs. Ann Glover.
Thank you. That was good.
Thanks, Mom.
So we're going to go to Boston and we're going to walk around the comics. So there are some memorials to some of the people that are buried there. I'd like to go back and look at it in terms of that and not almost treating it like it is a cemetery as opposed to being just a green space, because every time they dug for the tea, they were finding bones and bodies and stuff down there when they were putting the tea in.
And there are a lot of memorials. Like there's a memorial to Anne Hutchinson on the grounds of the state capitol building. But there's a lot of memorials up there. We made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, isn't the Anne Hutchinson one like right in front of the Capitol?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that was great. Thank you, Mom, for researching and sharing.
Love to. Thank you for having me back again.
Anybody else have questions, comments, concerns?
I got nothing.
I was going to say, did you read the book Witches when you did your Salem
Yes.
episode?
By
I want to
Stacey.
say Ann Glover was mentioned briefly
Yes.
in that book because as she was talking, I'm like, okay, I've definitely read, not as in detail as what Lynn had just
No, but heard the name
presented.
before.
Yeah, there was definitely like a quick we're going to Salem, so we're just going to skirt past this thing that happened also very quickly.
Yeah. I think it was with those when they talked about Wells, Maine with the Native American
Yes.
tax and everything.
Yep.
Like it was like the background information.
It was when she had said Martha that I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
No, this definitely rings a bell. Okay, I'm glad that I'm not crazy. and
Nope,
that
you're not.
That was there.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I thought the same thing.
I think she's very well known in the Boston area.
Yeah.
But if you're not from this part of the country, you may not be as well acquainted with Anne.
Well, that's the truth for witches in general, I find. I have friends who live Colorado or in other states, and they didn't learn about witches the same way that we do out here. We kind of, I feel like, it's just everybody knows about the Salem witch trials, and people do as far as Hocus Pocus and the
yeah,
Sanderson
right.
sisters, but they don't have the history and the background of it the way that we get in schools in Massachusetts.
And they have those misconstrued facts about witches burning and not that they were hung. or-
Yes, Pizza Man showed us that. What was he, nailing them to crosses? Is that what he
Yes.
did?
He was mixing some religions together.
Yeah,
It's
some
fine.
Jesus stuff and witches stuff all backwards. It's Rhode Island for you. I don't know.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Wanderers. Happy New Year again.
Happy New Year.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye, Wanderers.
Thanks for listening today. Wicked Wanderings is hosted by me, Hannah.
And co-hosted by me, Courtney.
And it's produced by Rob Fitzpatrick.
Music by Sasha M.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to leave a rating and review, and be sure to follow on all socials. You can find the links down in the show notes. If you're looking for some really cozy t-shirts or hoodies, head over to the merch store. Thank you for being a part of the Wicked Wanderings community. We appreciate every one of you. Stay curious, keep exploring,
And always remember to keep on wandering.
Attention, cryptid enthusiasts and Bigfoot believers. Unleash your inner legend with our brand new Bigfoot t-shirt, now available just $19.95 plus shipping. This tee is everything you've ever wanted, soft, lightweight, and designed with the perfect amount of stretch for maximum comfort. Made from 100% combed and ring-spun cotton, it's pre-shrunk to keep its flattering fit and durable enough to withstand your wildest adventures. With its high-quality construction and iconic design, this sure is a must-have for anyone who's ready to join the hunt in style. Sizes are available for everyone, so don't wait to grab yours today. Head to the link in the show notes to snag your new favorite shirt and rep your Bigfoot pride wherever you go.